Evening, everybody. How's it going? Comic Crack here with you. A bit later, but I wanted to just shoot something to just talk about a couple things that have been on my mind. Stuff that I've read, stuff that I've watched. Not earth-shattering thoughts by any stretch, but just some things. I just think that for those of you who tune into the weekly chat with Dr. Monkeybot and Larasa on Dr. Monkeybot's channel, I don't know. It's always a good conversation. Absolutely. This week was particularly juicy, I thought. A lot of great things that we discussed. A lot of great books we got to discuss briefly, and kayfabe and everything involved around that kind of world there. But there was still a couple of things that I wanted to just touch on while it's kind of fresh in my mind. That I thought I'd just it's just been stewing in my head all night. So I thought I'd just get this down for the record, Your Honor. One of the things, I'll start off with one of the things that I touched on in the video. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll talk about just briefly a couple of things. So a couple of things I picked up. There's a few more that that I got off of the Winnipeg Comic Addicts. I'm going to be meeting up with a couple of the guys tomorrow. One of the things that I won for, I think, $3. Was it $3? I don't remember. Anyway, one of the things that I won was Death, the High Cost of Living, the Vertigo. I guess according to kind of the Wikipedia, the first published Vertigo stuff. And I had that very first issue quite a long time ago. And as, you know, a common story amongst most of us, comics come, comics go. It's just one of those that I don't have anymore, like a number of things. And I don't quite remember what happened to it, whether I traded it, whether I sold it, whether I gave it away. I don't really know. But recently digging back into the Vertigo stuff, there's things that I miss, and I do kind of want back just to reread because I'm really digging the Vertigo stuff. But when I went and picked up my last volume of Akira, he was kind of open for business, and I went and picked up a few things. So maybe we'll just start with that while we're waiting, see if anybody shows up. One of the things I'm pretty excited about is I already had one of the issues in this small stack of now 6 books, but the other 5 he had there for dirt cheap. So I thought I'd give them a try. It's not a character that I know a lot about. Again, in kind of collecting Spectre and Deadman stuff, Deadman makes an appearance in this run. So that was why I grabbed the issue that I did, the first one that I had. But now I've got a few more kind of right in line with each other. So I thought I'd give it just dive into it a little bit. I got 6 issues now, and I'll kind of read up on it and see what I think. I read this first issue. This is number 30. Sort of, I get the impression even from flipping through a couple of these that Phantom Stranger in this story almost acts as kind of a horror host to some degree, with minimal input into the actual story itself. Not a complaint, just that's how it read to me. And even flipping through 1 or 2 of the other issues, I was surprised at how little he appeared in the issue. Again, this isn't reading all of them yet, so we'll see what happens when I get into the book. But intriguing. This first one didn't blow me away. The story didn't kind of amaze me. The art was passable. But, you know, when they're dirt cheap, it's easier to get into them. The covers I do really enjoy. This is issue number 31. And then this is the one that I already had. Issue, what is that, 33 with Deadman. Another really great cover. 35. $39, again with Deadman. and I believe 40. Yeah, and then issue number 40 with Deadman as well. This was the one that kind of caught my eye flipping through it. Let's put these down here. Some of the creature designs in some of these older books can be pretty fun, and this one was no exception. Let's see if I can find the page here. Yeah, I enjoy this spider-like spirit monster or whatever. I like the color. I like the design of it. So that's kind of appealing. So yeah, I'm interested to get into that and see a little more what's going on. I haven't looked too far into the price of like the earlier issues and stuff. I don't know if they're kind of real sought after books or not. A couple of the other things, I was finally able to grab this J.M. DeMatteis Doctor Strange into Shambhala, which I've been looking for a while after reading Moonshadow and really enjoying it and looking into other stories that he did. This one popped up in my sight pretty quickly, but not an easy one to find. And I guess I don't know if this was kind of reprinted or anything, but so glad to have found this kind of buried in the boxes. J.M. DeMatteis and Dan Green doing art, and the art is really, really nice, kind of like watercolor. And the story itself is pretty good. You know, I mean, the Doctor kind of reaching a new phase in his Sorcerer Supreme, kind of taking that next step after the Ancient One has died. Kind of gets sent on a mission from who he thinks is the Ancient One, has kind of sending him on this path to kind of almost find like an inner peace. Like I said, not a horrible story, but it didn't grasp me. It didn't grab me as much as some of the other J.M. DeMatteis stuff that I've read in the past. This one didn't jump off the page at me. Weird Dad, how's it going, man? Nice to see you. I saw you in one of the Twitch live streams. I don't know if it was a God Waffle Noise Pancakes or where it was, but I did see you pop up in one of those not too long ago. So yeah, a fun read for sure. Glad that I found it. It's great to add to the Doctor Strange collection. It just didn't blow me away as much as I thought it was going to. Yeah, which isn't horrible. It was still fun. It wasn't tedious. Another one that I found for $1 was an old Cracked magazine. He had quite a few of them. I was hoping to kind of isolate the issues that not Peter Bagg. Peter Bagg is in this one, that Daniel Clowes did some work in. He did The Ugly Family and a couple of other things. And the one website I found while I quickly went through my phone to see if I could find specific issues if he had them, it said that there was some Clowes in this one. It was the only one that he had in the store where there was potentially some Daniel Clowes, at least according to the website I found. Kind of disappointed that flipping through it, there wasn't actually anything in it. So the problem in kind of doing a website search on the fly. But like I said, there's a piece here. Damn, didn't bring my damn glasses. There's a piece here written by Pete Bagg and drawn by Bill Ray. I haven't sat and dug through this one yet. This was Cracked was the one that my brother was the Cracked reader in the family. I was the Mad reader in the family, and it never really jumped on my radar as much as like he loved Crack. It wasn't anything that I navigated. I kind of drifted towards it. It always seemed a little bit of like a Mad ripoff to me. But then once I started seeing people like Daniel Clowes in it, and now knowing that Pete Bagg did some work in it as well too, which I don't think I was aware of. It appeals to me even more, especially this era. So this is 1987, January 1988 is this issue. And you can see it's got to be Pete Bagg doing some of the art as well too, because there's some of his art in there for sure. So a nice find. And again, for $1, how the hell can you go wrong? I sent photos to my brother just to kind of show him, hey, look what I found today. And immediately he just was reminded and loved it. Just loved seeing it. Ordered a copy of the Doctor Strange drawn by P. Craig Russell. That's cool. Very cool. Where do you order from when you, I'm assuming you're online? Is it mycomicshop.com that you use, or is there somewhere else? Another thing that he had in the back issues, I don't think I knew that this existed either, from Deep Sea Comics, issue number 5 of Reed Fleming, World's Toughest Milkman. I've got all these already, the Eclipse run, but this was, I wasn't sure if this was kind of the company that had done Reed Fleming before Eclipse. I wasn't aware that there was printings after that, let alone that this company existed. So 1996 is the copyright in this one, November 1996, third printing. I sat down and this was the first one that I read, and fucking hell, I had forgot how enjoyable. I loved Reed Fleming when I first discovered it and grabbed all the issues. I really, really enjoyed it. I haven't read it since then. They've sat in the boxes and I really need to revisit them. What a fucking funny story. Like, there was just some stuff that it's really tough to do comedy in any way, but there's a certain quality of the writing and the certain quality of the way that the dialogue flows that really made me laugh out loud a couple of times. Kind of ridiculous, but really, really silly and really, really fun. Especially when I had forgotten the show that he watches every single day that he never misses is The Horrors of Ivan, who at this point in the series is now a skeleton that just wanders around, but he can't miss the show. So he'll skip out of work, race home, jump over things just to get in front of the TV to catch the next episode. So great. If you don't know Reed Fleming, absolutely give it a shot. So yeah, this Deep Sea Comics, Canadian, Vancouver. Yeah, Vancouver, British Columbia, West Hastings Street. When I looked on the website, they have a lot of, you can buy some original art. They've got t-shirts, they've got comics that they'll sell, a whole bunch of stuff. Well worth checking out the Deep Sea Comics website. So that was a really nice find and really fun to revisit, like I said. One of the other things, yeah, I've got a constant cart at mycomicshop.com as well too. There's just always stuff that I just continually add to it and take out and put back, and I just haven't had the extra cash to kind of splurge on some of the things, because I mean, as everybody's probably well aware, you can pretty much find anything on that website. So when I find something, I usually check there first. One that I did talk about briefly during the Friday chat here on Dr. Monkeybots was this Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon Heartland one-shot, which apparently was kind of part of the Hellblazer universe, which I was unaware of. You couldn't tell it I couldn't tell it from reading the issue. It's really a standalone thing, and I didn't feel like I was missing anything by not knowing that at the time. I loved this issue. This was a solid book. I was saying it this afternoon too, that it's incredible in one issue. Granted, it's a pretty thick issue. It's incredible what you can do in a single issue if you're just a solid storyteller. It takes place in Belfast in 90. I think the year that the story takes place is 94-ish. This came out in 97. And just the way the whole story unfolds. I was saying today that for the first few pages, it's these kind of just these guys hanging out on the street and just talking. No real clue as to who they are, other than they're just sitting, drinking, and talking about the state of the world and their perspective on things and their outlook on what's going on around them. And then another character passes by and they start commenting on his story and where he's going. He's going to visit this woman to kind of profess his love to her, which he does on a weekly basis. And then we leave those characters and we follow this guy to the house. Something happens to him when he's there. And then we're led into the house the next day to kind of catch the fallout and how they respond, how this family, we find out is a family, how they respond to this event that's happened to this guy. But then that's the last time we see him until kind of halfway through the story and then near the end again. Really clever way to kind of introduce you to things piece by piece. My son and I actually just watched Death Proof tonight, Tarantino. He hasn't seen a Tarantino flick, so that was the first one he picked. And I enjoy that kind of storytelling where you're following somebody who doesn't actually turn out to be a main kind of focus of the overall story, like it is like in Death Proof. You follow that first group of girls, and then you are then eventually led to who become kind of the heroes or the main focus of the story, arguably. So I love this about that, how it introduced you to these characters. And then it just goes from there to a very dysfunctional family and getting a glimpse into their life and how they've got to where they are. And you kind of get a little bit more glimpses as to their individual personalities. Lots of flashbacks with their father, who was this alcoholic. Hell of a book, man. One of those things that when it was over, I kind of wish there was a couple of other stories, you know, but in a way it's probably for the best, because that's a fucking solid single issue. It makes me want to read like Preacher and his stuff in Hellblazer even more than I already did. So really nice surprise there. One of the other things, maybe I'll do this stack last. One of the other things I was going to talk about last night, I guess it was, had the urge to jump into a bit of Jess Franco. Again, I'm a big fan of Jess Franco's stuff. Seen this before. It's been a long time since I've watched it. Vampiros Lesbos. And my wife was around just kind of doing her own thing and peeking over her shoulder, sort of watching, and then finally came over and watched the rest of it with me. It's not her style of film. And I think she got something out of it for sure, because we were just talking about it as it was going. And one of the things that jumped out at me, first of all, that Soledad Miranda was just an absolutely stunningly beautiful woman. Just the storytelling in this, not Earl Grey. Gore Vidal just recently had a video about storytelling and the importance of stories in our lives. And I mean, I don't have much to add other than what he said, because he said it just incredibly well. I mean, I don't know where we'd exist without stories, or how we would exist without stories. I think they're really, really important, giving you these perspectives, allowing you to get a kind of window into someone else's reality, just to kind of see things from a different perspective, or even just presenting how to present a story, or how to present naughty vampires indeed. How to present an idea, whether it's written, whether it's comics, whether it's a movie, whether it's music, that idea of presenting something that becomes sort of otherworldly. And early on in this one, the main character, or one of the main characters, is having what you eventually realize is a dream. And it's these kind of images that are just laid in. So you kind of feel lost a little bit until you realize what's going on. And then, of course, she wakes up from the dream and it's very absolutely clear what was going on. There's two cuts that are offered on this one. One is the German cut and one is the Spanish cut, I believe. Yeah, the Spanish language bootleg is offered here on the second DVD. Franco was saying that he likes the German one better. The Spanish one, whoever put together the Spanish one, or however that went, they decided to put a voiceover in as well. So it starts explaining those things, which is just always a horrible idea. You're just losing so much. Obviously, don't really need to get in too much of a conversation about leading an audience versus letting them figure out or even be mystified. One of the things that did stand out to me, though, with some of those scenes was how kind of comic-like they can be with the use of how the images move through this, how you're moving through these images in space. And I mean, there's just a couple of things that share screen. What do I got to do? I got to click that. I got to click this. I got to do this. I believe that's sharing the screen. Let's hope. Yeah, I'm guessing it's sharing the screen. I'm going to go for it. Usually a little window pops up where I can see myself too, but that doesn't seem to be happening right now. That's fine. So I found this page and it just illustrated a couple of the shots really nicely. There's just this amazing quality. It's an early film, so Franco had worked with a lot of producers before this point, and had some input, but for the most part ended up filming other people's stories. This kind of marked a turn where he did I believe, maybe I'm wrong about that. I thought that maybe this was a time where he kind of went out on his own to do it, but I do remember seeing some producer credits, some German producers in this one. I think maybe this was still early on, though, where he was getting more control and being able to present a movie the way that he wanted to present it, and kind of discover his own language. And you can get a sense of that here. There's definitely some Franco moments in it, absolutely. But it's not as, I hesitate to use the word polished, but it's not as polished as some of his later work. And I mean, I love all eras of Franco, everything from Diabolical, Dr. Z, and onward. Like it's incredible stuff. But even images like this, with this single drip of blood coming down the window, is amazing. But this is the image that struck me the most. This is the only shot that I could find online. There's a wider shot of this. It's obviously a take on Dracula. It's just that there's females in the roles instead of males. So when our main character, whose name I'm blanking on, discovers, quote unquote, Count Dracula in asleep, it's in a pool, but she wears this red scarf the whole time. And in the wider shot of this, just the way that scarf is in the water and the way she's laying in the water is just an incredible image. And she's got, you can't really see it there, but she's got some blood on her mouth as well too. Just really, really beautiful stuff. And there's a lot of solid images in here. I mean, it is still of a certain type of movie. So there is some stuff that's just kind of ridiculous to see and makes you chuckle or whatever. But this, stop sharing that. And then see if I can go back. Just these images and how they relate to, close that here. It seems to be wanting to do something. Sorry about that. Sharing screen isn't always the easiest to do. Just how that relates to some of the comic storytelling, and just finding that really nice image and something that you're not really, I don't know, there's also a quality to the film and the deterioration, et cetera, et cetera. I love Roland. He's incredible. I've got a bunch of his movies as well too. Just beautiful. I've got a magazine somewhere too, that has interviews and kind of breaks down some of his movies. And I think shows some poster designs too that were done by Drouillet. I love his stuff. A friend of mine in Ontario kind of is responsible for introducing me to all of these kind of directors. He's a huge film buff, enormous, and was right on when DVDs started coming out, right out of the gate. He was ordering stuff and discovering all these obscure little companies that were releasing all of these movies that we just didn't have exposure to. So he turned me on to a lot of stuff. Roland's stuff didn't resonate with me back then as much as it does now, like revisiting kind of like 10 plus years later. Love it even more. And again, it's that fantastical, fantastical kind of element to some of these guys' films that is just incredible, showing you things that you just don't see. You know, there's also nothing wrong with having a little bit of nudity in it as well, too, because at the end of the day, these are movies that are made by men that are for a specific audience. But I do find that some of these things, the thing that also appeals to me about them is these kind of stronger female characters that are in these lead positions. Again, totally understanding that at the end of the day, they're still appearing naked. They're still having to make out with other women because there's this titillation factor that has to happen. It's still being directed and produced by men. I totally understand all that, but there is something that's presented in a, I find, just a more positive light when it comes to how female characters are portrayed. One of the things that I always love about, pretty sure it was Jess Franco that said it, that the relationships that worked best with producers were ones that just left him alone to do what he wanted to do. And the producers that left him alone were the ones who said, as long as every 8 minutes or whatever the time was that he used, you just show a naked woman, they didn't care what else I did. They gave me free reign. I could write whatever story I wanted to write, as long as I did that to make sure that I was doing something that was going to sell in that market where these were going to play around the world. They didn't give a shit what else I was doing. They didn't give a shit what other kind of stories I was doing. They really left me to my own devices, which again, as I've talked about on here, probably some of the best stuff is going to come from that, right? So the ability for some of these artists to create their own language and create their own worlds in an industry that was kind of seedy and you know, not a lot of people were, well, I guess enough people were fans of, because there was a lot of money in it and these things were getting made on a pretty regular basis. It just reminds me again of kind of comics where it's just looked at this as this disposable medium that who gives a shit about them? Get rid of them. As soon as you read it, throw it in the garbage. Your parents hate it. What are you doing? You're wasting your life. You know what I mean? It's that kind of atmosphere that seems to allow people to just go wild and just try stuff out and see what works, see what sticks, see what doesn't stick. So that was really fun. And like I said, even my wife, I think, got something out of it. It's not her style of stuff. But I think she was even enjoying it. And when we watched some of the special interviews, the special features rather, specifically an interview with Jess Franco about this. And then who else did they talk to? They don't have his name here, and I'm blanking on his name. Author of Murderous Passions, The Delirious Cinema of Jess Franco, and I'm totally blanking on his name. A really great interview with him, too, just kind of talking about this movie specifically, but talking about Jess Franco on the whole. It just gave her another perspective and kind of, I guess, made sense to her the way they were speaking about it. So that was kind of fun to sit and watch that with her. So it just leads me into wanting to watch more of his and probably revisit a bunch more of his movies over the next while, because I've got a mountain of them. Well, small mountain of them anyway. And then the last thing. Last thing I wanted to talk about, got this in the mail today. And I realized I'd posted the photo on Twitter, and Sleepy Reader Damien had commented on it like, holy shit, there's an actual in-print zine, a paper print zine that's out there. And I realized that I've never really talked about these in a video, I don't believe. So this is Bubbles 6.5. It was going to be a free comic day thing. And then due to what's going on in the world, don't know if you know, they decided to kind of pay what you want. The money would all go to a charity, and then they would just mail you out your copy. And I couldn't resist. I mean, it's going to a good cause. I really enjoy the zine anyway, but it was hard for me to resist. I'm going to kind of do this, resist the urge to order a zine like back in the olden days where they're going to just write your name on the back and put your address and just throw it in the mail. So you'd get your own zine with a little stamp on it. And of course I had to put my own kind of stamp on it as well too. And it's a nice little issue. I read it this afternoon. Chris Pitzer is in here giving his top 10. Jason Hamlin, who is what do they call him? The dealer to the stars from the Kayfabe channel, and then the guy who creates the zine himself, Brian Baines, gives a top 10 as well. And then there's a couple of strips at the back. So that was a nice little read. So like I said, and it's also a great cover too. Like all of the kind of Easter eggs in there, all the posters on the wall. He's got a box marked Underground Comics. He's sitting on the floor. He's got his Nancy shirt on, whole 9 yards. Like, it's great. Hamlin would be great. I just ordered something from him. I was really hoping it would show up today. I ordered it from him weeks ago. He's been doing these sales on Instagram, and he had a Cowboy Hank. I believe it's a Spanish version for sale, and that's a book that I've been looking for a long time. I've wanted some Cowboy Hank stuff for quite a while, and he was offering decent shipping and everything, although it turns out that it may have sort of backfired. I may have screwed it up for anybody else in Canada, because it's like, holy shit, I was really surprised at how much it actually cost. And to his credit, like, I offered, hey man, like, I will gladly send you more money. I don't mind paying the difference. And to his credit, he was just really nice. Said, no, it's fine. I made the mistake. I'll cover it for you. Which was very nice of him. We had a little bit of a chat on Instagram. Seems like a really solid dude, and I cannot wait to get that book. And from what I understand of the Cowboy Hank that I know about, there is a lot of stuff that is wordless. And even the stuff that does have some dialogue, from what I've seen, I don't know if it's going to spoil it too much for me, because the visuals are what's incredible of that. I just know that mail is really slow lately, so I'm hoping that I get it sometime in the next month. So because Damien had that reaction, I thought I'd just kind of briefly show the other issues that I've got. There's been, obviously there's been 6 full issues, and then this half issue. I'm missing 1 issue. We'll find out as we go, but covers everything from manga to little more mainstream comics, to older comics, to mini comics. There's reviews, there's comic strips. Yeah, absolutely. A segment on the show would be incredible. Interviews, all sorts of stuff, and then comic strips as well. Magazine size, really, really nice. And I think, like Damien was saying, it's great. Oh, and this one has a really nice music from Nancy. I guess there was a group of artists that used the comic strips from Nancy to create music and then performed it live. So there's a little mini comic attached into the middle of this one with which kind of looks at the score. You can find the videos online. The idea is amazing. The actual pieces that I listened to when I first got this issue, I wasn't blown away by, so I didn't really dig too much deeper into it, but it might be nice to revisit it just to see. So really well put together. From what I understand, he's a guy who's kind of done zines his whole life. And this is just kind of the new one. I guess he's saying in this 6.5 that he lives just down the road from Chris Pitzer from Ad House Books, who also seems like a hell of a nice guy. So it's cool that there's a print zine, and I know that at one point, I hope Damien doesn't mind saying this, but I know that at one point Damien was talking about potentially doing a print zine as well, or maybe it was going to be digital. I don't remember now. But he was talking about doing a zine, and I mean, now with the Kayfabe guys, with the Kayfaber crew, they did the Wizard zine as well too. So it's I don't know, man. And I love the zines that I've found from kind of back in the day. I do really enjoy having something right in front of you. Paper zine. I do like that it still happens. I'm sure that there's a lot more out there currently. I'm not tapped into it as much. I'm not tapped into kind of mini comics and that whole world either. So I have a feeling there's a lot of the stuff that exists. It's just I'm not in those kind of veins. Yeah, absolutely. Weird Dad. Check them out for sure. I'm guessing. So let's see. No, it doesn't have it doesn't have a website, but I mean, the email is bubblezine@gmail.com, and then the Instagram is bubbles_zine. So just check them out. I'm sure there will be links there. So yeah, Talking Kramer's Ergot with Sammy Harcum. Looks like there's some Charlie Brown on there. Gates of Heck, some ads on the back. And they're all well worth ordering. Yeah, and I mean, once I kind of fill up the old PayPal account, I'll jump on that last issue that I'm missing. And there's some Family Circus. This was the zine. He had a zine about Family Circus before this, is what he was saying in this 6.5. What's his schedule like here? I think he does a little schedule. So March 2019 was the first issue. May was the second one. July of 2019 was the third one. October 2019. So he's doing like 4 a year. And then so far this year, he's done 2.5. So February and April. So a pretty good schedule of putting this stuff out. And I'm sure it's a hell of a lot of work. For the next ones, I'll just kind of show you the covers. The covers do a pretty good job of breaking down what's inside. And I mean, I was saying it this afternoon too. Unfortunately, I've only read the first and this newest. So I've taken them out and putting them right beside my chair down here with the intention of continuing to dive into these. Brian Blommerth discussing his first book, Bicycle Day, which looks like a phenomenal book. I've seen it at the local bookstore. My man, Tetsunori Tawaraya, who I absolutely love. And if you've been a fan of this channel for a while, you know that I've bought quite a few things. Tawaraya. Unbox Industries, I think, on Instagram, they did a couple of toys based on his character design that I'm absolutely jonesing for. They're beautiful looking. They're expensive as shit, and I just can't bring myself to spend that kind of money. I think it was like $100 American, I believe, maybe a little bit more. I can't bring myself to just spend that money on a toy that's just going to sit on the shelf, as much as I would love them, because even the box art that they come in is all Tawaraya designed and really, really fucking beautiful. If you haven't seen those, I would suggest checking out Unbox Industries as well too. So that's issue number 3. And then issue number 4 is the one I'm missing. So here's number 5. And then the newest one, well, I guess the newest one is 6.5, but the one that came out just before that, issue number 6 with a whole piece on Ben Mara, and I believe a mini comic of Ben's in it as well. Let's pull this one out. Can't remember if it's stapled in. Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's a fantastic one. Our Lord, My Master by Ben Mara. And the premise is that this is a world where everybody is just full of debauchery, and everybody's having sex with everybody, and they think religion is ridiculous, and how silly it is that there was a time where people believed in God, and one of the girls in the class is a secret Christian. So she's trying to come to terms with how to break it to people, because everybody wants her to go to these orgies and these parties and take drugs and have sex, and she doesn't want to do it because she's the secret Christian and she wants to save herself for marriage and all this. So really, really funny, really, really great little story. And then, of course, a killer interview with Mara as well. So, yeah, absolutely check it out. Yeah, the Hollow Press store. I agree with you. It's the stuff that they've put out over the years. The Brinkman stuff. What else do I have? Well, they're not handy, but I've got a few things. They're probably on that. Just some amazing work. And I think one of the things that I loved the most about the Tauraya stuff that they put out, or a couple of things Tauraya that they put out, is that that plastic-like paper that they use for the comics. Is one of the most incredible paper stocks, plastic stocks to print comics on, because it's this black that even when you're touching it doesn't leave any smudges to kind of destroy that kind of pristine black background, because the images are printed in this silver, and it really just jumps off the page. Yeah, it might be worth doing a look at all those again at some point, maybe talking about Hollow Press, checking out their website again. But yeah, there's beautiful stuff out there. There's too much out there. It almost feels sometimes like we're in a bit of a special time when it comes to comics and art and that sort of thing. There's a lot of people doing some really, really fantastic work, and they have been for quite a few years. And again, when you get this influx of smaller publishing companies that are printing up their own stuff and working with artists, especially because some of these artists are so good at jumping from company to company. So if you're following an artist, you're just going to discover some of these smaller companies just because. I mean, I think that's how I found out about Hollow Press, looking for more Tauraya stuff after buying the first Color Code book that I bought of his, checking him out as an artist and seeing what else he's done and discovering all these other places. So that was the meat of it, my friends. Weird Dad, thanks a lot for hanging out. Did I miss something? No, I didn't. So, I mean, just on the Cracked thing, it's now on my radar. I do want to find some of those older Cracked with some Daniel Clowes. I would love to revisit some of that Ugly Family. I haven't looked. I should do a dig. I imagine there's a collection of Ugly Family stuff out there somewhere. But it would be nice to read again. I guess the one last thing that I was reading last night, Dr. Monkeybot Adam has been talking about Heavy Metal magazine that he's been reading. He's got a big chunk of them recently-ish. And he's been wanting to kind of dive into them. And I've got a short box full of them. Hey, 64 page. So I started digging into the issues 2, 3, and 4, and sitting and just reading them and absolutely enjoying it. And I mean, as is always the way with these, it's nice to discover some of the other artists that are in here that don't necessarily come to mind. The Sergio Mikado is one of the guys that jumped out at me from this particular issue, with his kind of almost like that pointillism style of cartooning. Not quite like that, but it's what it reminds me of. Really beautiful stuff. So flipping through these last night and reading these 3 issues was really, really great. Even if sometimes the stories aren't the most fantastic thing you've ever read, it's just such a beautiful thing to look through. And again, it's nice to be reminded of a time where this must have fucking blown people away when you're discovering it. It's nice that these still exist, and even now they still end up blowing you away. So that's going to be fun. I pulled the box out from underneath the other ones, and it's just sitting beside me. Hopefully I'll make it through the whole box by the time this quarantine is over in a couple of years, or however long that is. So yeah, that was it. Thanks very much for tuning in. Weird Dad 64 page special. Good to see you both. And we'll talk to you later, peeps.